A lot of One Piece booster boxes have exploded recently. A lot of them have gone up serious amounts. Some have even 2 or 3x in the last just month alone, in the last 30 days. But how have the mangas been doing? That's what we'll be talking about in today's video. We're going to be going over a bunch of mangas. We're going over Gear 5 Luffy. We're going to be looking at the OP13 Luffy. We're going to be looking at Gear 2 Luffy and a bunch of other mangas, seeing how they're doing, because a lot of them have exploded in price to new all-time high levels that we have never seen before. So let's talk about them and let's compare them from the previous month. Alright, what other better manga to start off with than Luffy? So Gear 5 Luffy sold for 8,100 USD on auction on the 4th of December. Now, if you skip a whole 30 days later, boom, the latest is $15,000. So near a 2x, not quite, but pretty much a 2x. This is not only an all-time high sale for a Gear 5 Luffy, this is this is a lot. So yeah, my dream of getting this card is just kind of going down the drain every day that goes by. I'm really losing hope to that, to be honest with you. So yeah, that is pretty insane. For such an expensive card, from 8.1 to 15 is a lot, right? Like, so from $1,000 to $2,000, it is reasonable, right? Like, that can happen. But from $8,000 to $15,000, that is a crap load. But anyways, moving on, the Zoro. It went from $3,450 and then the recent sale of $4,800. So this one isn't as crazy, but the Zoro used to sell for about $1,000, sometimes even less. I picked up a manga Zoro like 4 months ago for like $600. So yeah, these things used to be cheap as anything, but now they're super expensive. So I guess that's just how the cookie crumbles with this. Usually those older mangas have gone up a lot. Some of the newer ones haven't really gone up a whole ton, but anyways, moving on. Oh yeah, and we'll also save OP13 for last because there was also a new all-time high sale, so we'll talk about that. But anyways, this Luffy right here, this one sold for $3,600. CS says best offer accepted. This is the Gear 2 Luffy as a PSA 10, $3,600, and it recently sold for $7,200. So that is just a clean 2x right there. That's pretty insane. This is a card that's a pretty good card, but this is actually kind of difficult to pull. It is difficult to pull, but it's actually really hard to get. That's the thing, like the actual boxes, because the boxes are about $650. This set is a really popular set. It's really new, but it's really hard to come by. This might be one of the most expensive mangas. Look, realistically, we don't know, but this is really hard to come by for the reason that it's from the extra booster series. They usually don't do reprints for those booster boxes, so it's kind of like what you get at release is just, what you're stuck with. But when it comes to having such a good manga inside, it does spice things up a bit. But yeah, this card has gone up so much in price. And then moving on, we have the Silver Luffy. So I know this isn't a manga, but like, it pretty much is. It's technically not, but it's literally like a remake of a very popular card, which was also a manga, so it pretty much is a manga. I know it's technically not, but we're just going to be talking about it. So this card was $3,000. This is best offer accepted, but it did sell for $3,000, and then it recently sold for $7,000, which is over a 2x in price. That is insane. Specifically, the silver one, the gold one, have gone up a lot. Now, also, the OP11 booster box has also just gone up a lot in general. The booster box is up to, I believe, $400 or around that range, which once again is really insane. A lot of booster boxes that have come out this year are really expensive. OP13 is $550. Extra booster is $620, $650, around that range. This booster box is like $400. Realistically, the only one that I can realistically think of that isn't that expensive is like OP12. But other than that, most of them are quite expensive. And then you got PRBO2, which is expensive as anything. It's actually the kind of the cheapest of the good ones. That one is about $320, but anyways, nonetheless, this is really, really expensive. Pretty much just a clean 2x. That is, more than a 2x. It's over a 2x. That's insane. Now, when you move to something a little bit older, like the Shanks, you will notice that it is actually a lot less. It went from 4K to 6K. Now, I think the reason why it actually hasn't really gone up a lot, I mean, it's a 50% return. It's still a lot, but I think the reason why it hasn't really gone up a lot is the reason that, first of all, the pop is actually really high. There's 1,100 PSA 10s versus some other pops where, like, dude, if you look at say this Gear 2 Luffy, there's 500. And if you look at something like the Silver Luffy, you'll see it's like 470. So there are a lot more of the Shanks. Now, I think the reason why this also hasn't really gone up a lot is it actually went up a lot previously. This card only used to be like $1,000 as a PSA 10. So then it went to $4,000, which is like a huge number. But then now it's $6,000. But the thing is, it going from like $1,000 to $6,000 is a really big jump. Similar to how Zoro used to sell for like $1,000 as a PSA 10. Now it sells for almost $5,000. So then when you look at something like Gear 2 Luffy, you'll see that, okay, sure, it's $7,200, but it was never $1,000 a manga as a PSA 10. It was simply never that price. It's pretty much always been expensive because it's always been hard to come by. Same goes for like the Luffy from OP13. That was quite difficult to get by. Not even the red one, just the normal one. It has never really been easy to get. So those ones, and same with the Sanji as well. The Sanji has sort of never been easy to get. So talking about the Sanji's gone from $3,600 to $3,800. It actually hasn't really gone up a lot, even though you can see that this one sold on January 2nd and this one sold on December of 2nd. So it's a whole month and the Sanji hasn't really gone up a lot. I think the contributing factor to this is that, yeah, once again, the Sanji was really hard to come by already. If you look at the pop, there's 260 of it. This actually might be a little bit undervalued because there's 260 of it. But it's worth about it's worth almost $4,000. But then you get to some cards like say the Shanks, it's $6,000, but there's 1,100, almost 1,200 PSA 10s. So that's like almost 5 times the supply. Yeah, it's more than it. So the Sanji might actually be a little bit undervalued here. Very small pop. This one is actually incredibly difficult to pull. I think PRB02 is quite undervalued for the reason that PRB generally doesn't get many reprints. Like PRB01, I don't even think it got a single reprint. But then also another thing is that this Sanji specifically is very difficult to pull. So I wouldn't be surprised if this Sanji actually ends up being like a really good buy in the future. And also just PRB as a whole. PRB02 is a really good set. It's so expensive. There's so many expensive chases inside. The manga is really good. So I think PRB02 is a really, really underrated play, if I'm being honest with you. I think it is definitely something worth paying attention to when you've got such overpriced boxes like OP13. Look, man, OP13, when it was $180 a box, I was saying, I think it's worth buying. When it was $250, I was saying, I think it's worth buying. When it was $300, I was saying, I think it's worth buying. Once it got past $300, I was saying like, yeah, okay, it's still worth buying, but how high can this thing possibly go? Now that's like $550. Now you've really got to question. Not saying that I can't go higher, because obviously that doesn't make sense. But booster boxes, provided the TCG doesn't die, usually they just keep going up indefinitely, right? But for the short-term side of things, for a set that is still in print, it does kind of make you second guess it. But then something like PRBO2, it's only $320. It's not a whole ton, so it still is within that range where it's like somewhat fair to buy. At least compared to other boxes like OP13, EBO2. EBO2 is another one. That one is so expensive. So this one might be worth buying. But anyway, so that's just a really random side note. There are some other cards like the Gold Shanks manga, which hasn't sold for a lot, but it seems like it will. The highest it sold for was, I believe, about 11,000 or 12,000 USD. It was about that range. It wasn't a whole ton. Now, okay, that is a lot, but it's not like shattering numbers where it used to be like $2,000, right? So the Gold Roger, I'm going to keep an eye on, and there's a couple cards I'm going to keep a pretty close eye on and see if we can get some pretty big sales, but I will report on them later if they do sell for a lot. But stuff like the Gold Roger, I haven't really seen, at least any like public sales on eBay, I haven't really seen anything above like the $12,000 range, so I'm not going to cover that just yet because it did sell for $12,000 like a couple months ago, so it hasn't really moved. Look, I'll show you what I mean. So basically this sold for $10,500. This is what it did sell for here. This was in November, but then if you check 22nd of December, you'll see that it sold for, this did sell for $12,500, but it is a best offer accepted. So it hasn't really gone up a whole ton compared to other ones like Gear 5 Luffy where it over doubled in price or near doubled in price. So I'm not really going to cover that just yet, but anyways, moving on to the final one, which is OP13 Luffy. What has this thing been up to? Now, this price here was practically the all-time high sale. It didn't really sell for more than this. This was pretty much just the most it went for. And then people were kind of thinking like, what's going to happen in the future? Where is it headed? But now we look and we see it sold for $20,000 on auction. So it's officially eclipsed $20,000. Where could it go from here? Realistically, we don't know. But what we do know is that it is really struggling to find a price. It's very volatile. Like most auctions are very different on the price. And I think the reason why is you know, you've got some people who's really confident in it saying that it's going to be super expensive, and some people are saying like, well, it's already expensive, it's already pricey. So you got like both sides to the coin. So when you've got such a rare card like this, it's not like it's selling every single day. Like when you would have mangas sell so commonly, when you would have some of those really common cards, like if we compare this card, for example, right? So this is a very popular card. It's a very common card. There's 8,000 PSA 10s. So it's actually a very common card compared to mangas, but it is also really expensive because it's such a desired card. Now, if you look at a card like this, you'll see that they're like pretty much on par. They're all selling for pretty similar amounts. And you can see like during November, you can see they all pretty much sold for a similar price. This was all auctions on the same day in November. This was 23rd. Sold for 1225, 1225, 1176, 1225. Oh, sorry, 1255. So they all sold for a pretty similar amount. And then as you get higher, you'll see that they sell for pretty similar prices. Now, whether it go up or down, that's a bit of a different story. But then when you look at things like the OP13 Luffy, you will see that like there are prices just all over the place. But nonetheless, it is still picking up demand. It is, I would assume, because the booster box is so expensive. So generally, if the booster box is really expensive, that means that it's been ripped a lot and it's rarer to find because so many are being ripped to pull this card. So generally, if you can see the box is expensive, that generally means that a lot has been ripped, which means this card is more desired now than ever. And we could see a massive bump for all One Piece prices in the last like 14 days. So this is no different. This is still going to experience a bump. It's nowhere near as much as other cards. It's not like it's going to go from $17,000 to what, $34,000. That's not going to happen. Okay, so it's probably not going to just double to that price. I would be so surprised if it did that. But nonetheless, it still is going to feel a bump, and this is the bump that we're feeling. Will it go up more in the future? I will let you know, and I will report that in the future if it does. But yeah, guys, that's going to do for today's video. A lot of cards have really risen in price, and it's very interesting to see all of these go up in price. Will we see other cards like the Sanji manga go up in the future? Will we see big prices for the Gold Roger, for the Signature Luffy? I'll report on that in the future. It'll be very interesting to see. But yeah, that's going to do it for today's video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.